MPG has been around for about 18 months now. We do peer support and recovery services, and about a month and a half ago, the board met, and we kind of wanted to see where we were with regards to, are we doing peer support the right way? Are we, going out there and meeting with clients and talking to them in a positive way that fosters growth? Or are we going out there and potentially harming the people we're trying to help? So that came before the board, and I think the board kind of looked at me and said, what's the answer, Adam? And I'm like, well, I'm trained and I'm state certified, so what we're doing is we're doing it right, and no worries about it. So I think the board wanted a little bit more strength or oomph, behind that. So we thought about what we could do, and my first thoughts were, well, if we have any questions about peer support, we should probably go to an expert. And there's no bigger expert than our speaker tonight. Our speaker tonight is the man who certifies all peer support specialists in the state of Texas. He's been doing it, well, he'll tell us, but for at least a few years now. I think 3? Yeah. With 300 or 400 certified?
About 300.
Okay. So that's quite a lot of people. Some of you have been certified by this gentleman. Some of you went through the certification process just, I think, a week and a half ago, and will probably be certified very shortly. So for me, it's a wonderful honor to have this gentleman here. And I think for us, either the board directors that's here or some board members at large that are here, it's also a chance to see, kind of gauge, are we doing the right thing? Are we not? If we're not, perhaps how do we shift and focus? And then Neal was kind enough, oh, I'm sorry, the speaker, he is, to let us open it up a little bit more than to just the board of Beyond Today and its board directors at large, board members at large. So with that kind of an introduction, again, it's really an honor to welcome Neal Norrid, Texas State Lead Certifier for Peer Support. And I think he has a presentation. I think then we have some questions. So there we go.
Adam, I have a problem with the screen here.
Looks like you're overdue for an appointment for free screening.
Yeah, that's
and smoking cessation class.
Yeah, that's it. 4 weeks overdue.
Yeah.
Well, now you know I can't see you. I always try and start a session like this off with a laugh. It's kind of an icebreaker, and it helps me relax because I still get a little nervous. I don't know if you knew this, but the #1 fear that most people in the United States report is the fear of public speaking. You know what the next major fear is? Death. There are people who would rather die. But it's a true story, I tell on myself. I was really young and I was in the computer business, and I was kind of one of those rocket scientist type nerds. And I got invited to give a paper at the National Computer Conference that they used to have. It was my first business trip. This was early 70s, and I had a brand new synthetic fiber suit. It looked great, but it's horrible to wear. It's plastic, basically. And I'm sitting at a table, I'm on a panel, and there's 5 of us sitting there, and there's a jug of water in front of me. And to try and look more grown up, I smoked a pipe. and everybody smoked back then. So I had a pipe going, and it was my turn to get up and speak, and the pipe shifted in my jaw and turned upside down, dumped the coals on my pants.
Oh.
Now they went up in the ball and fire, and I was quick on my feet. I grabbed a water jug and put the fire out. But now my suit's just gone. I mean, it was horrible. But I went ahead and gave my paper and got a big round of applause. And got back to the hotel. I took my jacket off and turned it around backwards and tied the arms behind me so I could get back to the hotel. That's a true story. But I'm not sure how to do this. But I think any conversation about peer specialists has to start with the recovery movement in the United States. And what is recovery? And I picked just a couple of examples here. I think Sam's is pretty good. It's new this year. Recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. And the people that developed the curriculum that we use in the state of Texas is the Appalachian Consulting Group. And they say recovery is the process of gaining control over one's life in the direction one would like to go on the other side of the psychiatric diagnosis. There are more, but they all have a common theme. So I'm going to talk about peer support and peer specialists. We're going to do this fairly briefly. But peer support happens everywhere. Breast cancer survivors. It happens everywhere. And it's just a natural part of being a human being, is you find some sensitive area that you connect with another human with, and there's a lot of power that comes from that. A peer specialist is someone with mental illness and works as a provider of mental health services, and they're trained and certified. They don't have to be certified, but they will be in the not too far distant future to provide those services. And then peer services in the mental health system are programs, discussions, events, groups, just the whole range of things that go on. And in my view, there are some fundamental beliefs that if you are really a believer in the recovery paradigm, we could agree on. Everyone has the ability to learn and grow. If you have a mental illness or not, that doesn't change that fact. People have an opportunity to live and grow and learn. What a person believes about herself if she's diagnosed with a mental illness is the most important determinant of her success in creating a life. And stigma has a whole lot to do with that. We'll talk some about stigma later on. Being diagnosed with mental illness does not take away the ability to think strategically and creatively. We're not brain dead. We've got working, functioning brains, and we think strategically all the time. What people focus on, they give power to. If you've been through the CPS training, there's 5 stages of recovery that we talk about. And the first stage, some people never get out of, which is just the impact of the illness. They're sick, they have a diagnosed condition, they're told that it'll never get better. In fact, it's likely to get worse, and your episodes are likely to last longer and be more intense. That's a pretty grim life. And when you believe that and you really buy into that, it's a tough life indeed. This is not much of a life at all. While symptoms of disability bring people in for services, the focus needs to change to wellness and strengths as soon as possible. And as peer specialists, that's what we all do. We always look for strengths and find, even in the most delusional people, you'll find islands of reality where you can connect with them on a personal level. So our job is kind of to have the divining rod and fish around to find one of those islands. And life's experiences are the best teacher, and that's what peer specialists are all about. If you don't have a story, you can't be a peer specialist. And we have a lot of people that try to get certified as peer specialists that don't have a diagnosis, which amazes me. we're in the middle of a huge shift in focus in the mental health industry. And I hate the word paradigm, but it really is a new paradigm if you look at it. We are looking at going from a system that's based on disease and disability to one that's based on wellness and strengths. That's new. Most mental health care providers in the United States, up until not that long ago, focus on stability. And once you're stabilized, the psychiatrist loses interest and the health provider loses interest as well. And stability is not necessarily a good life. I think most of us want a lot more out of our lives than just stability. We're going from staff-driven services to client-driven services. The difference here is in a lot of places still, a treatment plan is something that you take out of a file folder in Xerox, and that's what you get. It's a package of services and a package of expectations. There's no negotiation about it. The client isn't even involved. Here's your treatment plan. This is what you need to do. And we're seeing that move into more of a staff-client partnership instead of, I'm going to fix you. It's how can we connect with one another to make both of us better. And I really emphasize that. Mental health and whole health, you probably have heard of the study. If you haven't, major study was done in 2007, I believe, and it showed that people with mental illnesses had, in public treatment, you have to qualify that, live an average of 25 years less than the normal population. In Texas, that number is 29 years. And 30 to 40% of it comes from suicide and accidents. And accidents you never really know. But the other 60% is preventable diseases and things that you can get treatment for, and people just don't. And part of our job, we're seeing a merger of the medical field and the psychiatric world, and that's going to change. Dependence to independence, low expectations to high expectations. We don't expect much. In order for you to stay at ASH and be released, you don't have to be in very good shape. You know, it's just, in so many cases, there's no logical next step for the person once they get out of the hospital. Protection from failure, I think, is a big one too. We want to find things in people's lives that they want to set as goals, and we want to help them achieve those goals. Sometimes those goals are not particularly realistic. That has nothing to do with it. You're working to serve your client. And an example, actually I got this from iPal, is he had a 49-year-old guy who was sedentary, who had a high school diploma, and he wanted to be an astronaut. And instead of laughing at him or saying, no, there's no way on Earth you could possibly be an astronaut, what he said was, well, let's look into what it takes to be an astronaut. Why don't you write a letter and we'll send it to NASA and find out what the requirements are. Well, the requirements come back and, well, you have to have a PhD. Well, there isn't time for a PhD. Your maximum body fat is at 3%. You know, so you got to be physically, mentally, and the client figured out that this is something that wasn't going to work. But it turned out that what he really liked is he was just obsessed with aviation, and he got a job as a baggage handler at an airport, and he was happy as a clam. He just got to be around airplanes all the time and loved it. Stabilization, maintenance, recovery, and resiliency. We talked about that. Can things change? I'm not making this up. As late as the 60s, imbecile and moron were medical terms to describe mental limitations. Can you imagine that? It's just incredible. So how about today? Patient, consumer, client, person in recovery is a new one I heard, a PIR. When I was at Ansh, I proposed that we just called our patients people without keys. We had people with keys, we had people without keys. But since then, it's just, well, how about just people? You know, because that's what we are. We're all people. Via Hope, if you don't know about us, we're a small program. We're funded by the Department of State Health Services, and we get funding from the Hogg Foundation. And it's kind of a weird deal. But we're a training and technical support organization for mental health, and we're responsible for training and certifying peer specialists. We also train and certify family support specialists as well. Three requirements for the job. You have to be a past or present user of mental health services. You have to self-identify as someone who's used mental health services, and you have to have personal experience with recovery. That creates some interesting dynamics. You know, when you're looking for work and you're interviewing somebody as a peer specialist, the guy said, well, I did 90 days in jail for public urination or whatever. You go, great, you have prison experience. That's dynamite. Yeah, well, I had a crack habit and was in rehab, in and out. And that's fabulous. You're an ex-substance abuser. You know, you want the widest possible range of human experiences that you can draw on to help people. And so we don't have a lot of rules in place about education. A lot of people have their educations interrupted when they're really young, and they couldn't go to college, just didn't work out for them. There are a lot of different roles that peers play, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but change agent, bridger, peer mentor, peer supporter, peer recovery advocate, and a lot of times you perform some or all of those functions depending on the client that you're working with. I looked at a study that the National Association of Peer Specialists did to get some news from the streets about what people are really doing, working as peer specialists around the United States. These are in rank order, by the way. One-on-one counseling, teaching, housing assistance, advocacy, facilitation support groups, transportation assistance, I'm going to get to that in a minute, and vocational assistance. There are people who really get their hackles up when a peer specialist is asked to provide transportation services. But I've talked to people, and some of the best experiences they've had with clients is while they were driving between the clinic and the hospital or something like that, and you're in the car one-on-one, there's nothing else going on, and that can be a very therapeutic thing. Our challenges as an organization are to select the best possible applicants. And we get well over twice as many applications as we have seats for classes, so it's a fairly competitive process to get included. We want the best applicants, the best content that we can get, fair, balanced, and statistically valid certification assessment. We have a big project going on to rewrite our certification exam to make it, I think, more fair and stronger. And to provide ongoing support and training opportunities. And we're cooking up new classes all the time and have new things coming along. Peer specialists are the tip of the spear of the recovery movement. Peer specialists are the first new career that has happened since the recovery movement started to bloom in the 80s, which is when it really started to take off in small but important and impactful ways. And one of the things that you do, if you know it or not, is you fuel institutional change from the inside out. If you use proper language when you're talking to your clients, if you're respectful of them, if you form lasting relationships with them, the staff can see the improvement and the growth of the people that peer specialists serve. It changes minds. And that way it's kind of a viral type of organizational change. But it's happening, and it's working. What it takes to be a peer specialist in Texas is a 40-hour training program, and I kind of describe that as taking a drink from a fire hose. It is a lot of content that gets crammed into 40 hours. Certification period is for 2 years, and you have to earn continuing education credits. We do grandfather people from other states if they use the Appalachian State curriculum, and EBSA does, by the way. And all CPSs are bound by a code of ethics. We've certified 300 peers today, and demand greatly exceeds supply. The last one we had 75 applicants for 30 seats. Peer specialist movement represents a fundamental change in the delivery of mental health services. And it really is different. And it's different in so many ways. We'll talk about that in a bit. Peer specialist movement is recognized as an evidence-based best practice. It's you can use Medicaid billing for services, and huge growth is predicted. And that's a problem because it is hard to scale up training programs like that to reach audiences. There's only so many trainings you can do, and only so large the groups can get. So we're conservative. We don't want to certify more people than can get jobs, and we're all about jobs. That's what the whole thing is about, is we want these people working in the field. So we're conservative with our numbers, and we have limited funding. But big things are happening. The VA is looking at hiring 9,000 peer specialists nationwide this year. That's a lot of people. Okay, and that's me. I'll just leave that up there if you want to write it down, and if you need to get in touch with me or anything like that. And I met my objective. So I'm ready for questions and answers.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I love to hear you speak and love the material that you give each and every time I hear you speak.
I appreciate that.
It's totally true, so I appreciate it. We did have some people send in some questions online, so we'll kind of ask those first, and then we'll kind of open it up, if that's okay with everybody. And let's see, is Sean still here?
No, he has to go.
He's not, okay. So, okay.
You're all right.
Okay, so I'm gonna give one to you, Anka. I'm gonna give one to you. And go ahead and maybe Patricia, if you want to read the first one?
Sure. At what point does a peer support specialist enter the realm of recovery with a patient or client? And if that transition does occur, is peer support still a function of care the patient or client can benefit from?
Okay. I have a really bad memory, so I'll try to.
When in the relationship between the peer support specialist and the client can we say we've entered recovery? We're in the recovery process.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, they'd say at the reception desk. And a lot of hospitals around the country have peer specialists in receiving. And you have people that are in bad shape when they come in, and you hook them up with peer specialists almost immediately. And they diffuse the issues. They eliminate lots of restraints and seclusion episodes. It's a really practical thing to do. So I'd say from the first day you connect.
From the,
And the earlier the better. And that's contrary to the way a lot of places operate. At a state hospital like Ash, the people who are coming in here are usually in a pretty bad way. And they may be delusional, they might be having all kinds of problems, they're loud, yelling, it can be really awkward. And until they've had a few days for the meds to take effect, having a conversation is very difficult. So the tendency is to let them get on their meds and smooth out a little bit, and that's the wrong answer. You need to work with them all the way through. The problem is that we don't have enough peer specialists to work with every patient all the way through, and that's unfortunate. But that's my feeling on it. Okay?
Okay. I see the growing trend of peer supports being needed in the community, offering peer support and recovery-related services. Yet, as I work for a public health entity, I see that many who could get individualized services do not. Do you think that we are still dealing with a lot of stigma surrounding mental health? And if so, what can we do as peers to combat that stigma?
Well, I absolutely think stigma has everything to do with that. It's important to remember that Texas is 50th in the United States on mental health care spending. And actually,
first, I thought we were worse than Puerto Rico.
well, I actually heard 52nd the other day. One is what we're below one. So that's a lot of the problem, is that there just isn't any money. And Medicaid billable options help a lot of institutions, but if you're at a state hospital, they can't do that. You can't bill Medicaid. So, and there's a lot of restrictions and rules and red tape around it. But I think the biggest thing is it's just inertia. You know, we've got this healthcare system that's been moving at a glacial pace. I am old enough that I remember when case managers were highly controversial. They were just getting in the field. And the psychiatrists and psychologists were saying, oh, you're trying to take our jobs, these are the roles that we fill, and this is ridiculous. And you can't imagine not having case managers now. I mean, you just can't. How they survive the paperwork load alone is mind-boggling. Well, we got peer specialists going in, and now it's the case managers that are doing it. Oh, you're trying to take our jobs, and we're already doing all of this stuff, and we don't need you around here and that kind of thing. And it's kind of a snowball effect. But we're picking up momentum. I believe we have an attraction. This is going to last. And in terms of combating stigma, my best advice is always be the best peer specialist you can possibly be. Watch your language, watch your interactions with your clients, be respectful of staff, and role model what. I know this is going to sound crazy, but again, at a place like Ash, a lot of the clinicians have never seen a recovered person with bipolar that, you know, dresses nice, drives a car, they're married and they have children, they work a job, because as soon as they get stabilized, they're out the door, and the ones that manage to recover, they never seen it again. So all the people you have are in bad shape, and their expectations tend to focus on that. So it's a hard problem. Is that enough?
Okay. Many of us in peer support work on a part-time basis, and we therefore do not qualify for benefits. At the same time, some of us are on SSI, and we can only earn so much per month, which is not much. Do you have any thoughts on how the hourly rate of pay for peer supports can be increased, or how we can start to receive benefits?
Yeah. Well, Obamacare is going to help a lot with that. You know, if it moves ahead as planned, which is a big stumbling block for a lot of people. You know, it's like if you make a few dollars over the limit and lose your health insurance, you're in deep trouble if you have a mental illness. So you can't. And I've heard employers use that as an excuse for their hourly wages. is, well, we want to make sure that, people don't lose their benefits, so we're going to pay you $10 an hour. And the truth is that it's going to take a while, but I believe that's going to get better. And we certainly put as much pressure on the system as we can to make it better. The VA pays a lot better than most of the MHAs and state hospitals.